Hi, I'm Olivia Wagner, president of InterimExecs, and I'm joined by my co-founder and CEO of InterimExecs, Bob Jordan.
Hi, Olivia.
Today, we're going to go through some frequently asked questions when we're speaking with company owners, board members, investors, management teams. Usually they're exploring, is an interim or fractional CEO a good fit for them? So if this is a completely new concept to you, or you're considering how to tap into the right resources, this will be a good discussion. I know we have some new listeners, so before we begin, a little background. Bob, do you want to begin? Share how you got into the interim space?
Well, I was an interim CEO going back to the mid-90s. I came on this fortuitously. The guy who arguably was the first interim CEO in the US, a guy named Philip Monago, was my mentor. I'm not sure any interim CEO has accomplished what Philip did in 180 days. On day one, he incorporated Yahoo. And by day 180, he took it public on no revenue after Masayoshi Son from SoftBank put in $100 million in the fifth month. Try doing that. Anyway, so long background, having done gigs, and then, you and I, Olivia, started partnering about 15 years ago and created InterimExecs, which for folks that go to the website, they now see, this capability to being a matchmaker around the world.
And I think when we started 15 years ago, everything looked completely different. People would come to us, and I think the main question was, why would an executive ever choose a path like this? It wasn't really well understood. There's no job stability. Execs are jumping from one company to the next. And now you fast forward 15 years, we're in the gig economy. The idea that you can get specialized expertise for what you need right now is expected and common. So the conversation has very much shifted, and it's been fun just to see more companies being empowered to bring in the right resource right now.
Sure. The one qualifier, by the way, is, there's still a practice with public companies in the US, thanks to Sarbanes-Oxley, that if the CEO is fired, incapacitated, for any reason, the CEO is not in position to sign off on financial statements, the board will instantly appoint a interim. Usually it's a board member, and those are not the people we are talking about. Well, if I was going to be rude, I'd call them babysitters, seat warmers, but I won't. I'll just say they're placeholders, and they are not expected to act in any particular way. They're expected to just sign off on the financials and move on about your business. That's not the nature of this as career calling. The nature of folks, of outstanding executives who are drawn to this kind of work, absolutely is to have fast impact and to not need the corner office for the next 5 years. So that's the qualifier. So lots of reasons why this has become so popular. And I'm not sure if you're listening to this, you're probably aware that in the past 5 years in the US, the demand for interim and fractional has gone up 100-fold. The supply of executives has gone up many-fold as well. Lots of reasons for this. The nature of what is permanent in the first place is, what does that mean? The average tenure of a CEO, it's for most companies, it doesn't mean the person is going to be there the next 20 years of their life. And so the notion of having impact and getting done what the board and the shareholders and all the stakeholders are trying to accomplish, in many cases now, it's just not necessary or accomplished by a structure that says that one person is going to be in place with a impregnable contract. And part of this is the mobility or the portability of people in their careers at all levels is vastly higher. There's just so much more fluidity in career these days. And it affords so many companies more options to look more broadly at how they staff talent into the C-suite. But there's just more ability to be adaptable. What do you think, Olivia?
Yeah, I think, there's this time frame, which is one element of interim. You're not bringing in someone for 5-10 years to sit in the seat, but at its core, interim is more about the challenge at hand. So if a company's going through a transition, they're reaching these inflection points. a lot of times that's a great reason to bring on an interim executive. So it could be that someone suddenly left. You're going to have a void in that organization. And to make sure that you have strong leadership in place that's going to keep people moving forward instead of just coming to a halt is really important. And it also helps you reevaluate, what do we have, or what did we have, and what do we need moving forward? So we often, I think, see interims come in when there's these changes taking place. A company is growing very quickly. They reach a ceiling in that growth. How do they get to the next level? Maybe there is some kind of void. Someone leaves on maternity leave, or we've seen a lot of shady actors through the years too, whether it's fraud or just lack of results. And the other is turnaround. If a company is not doing well, revenue's down, morale's down, there's no communication amongst the team, bringing in an outside perspective can make a really big impact very quickly. So at its core, it's really identifying what are the challenges we have right now, and do what we need a few months, years from now. Maybe that looks very different than our current state and the type of leader needed.
I don't get very hung up over the labels when an organization shows up and has a need. The point is, do you have the perfect resource? If you have the greatest combination match between organization and leader executive, that's blessed. That is the point. Now, that said, the labels for the executive in the organization, they can matter a lot. And we're very sensitive to that. There are organizations where it matters very much how the executive, or if it's a number of people, how it is that they are coming in, how that is described to everyone in the organization, what's happening. And so there we see lots of nuance and thought and preparation as an engagement is launching. And it could very well be that someone comes into the operational role only gradually and over time. And it really is whatever makes the most amount of sense for the organization. I also have to say, we have to be sensitive to the executives. These are all highly accomplished people. They're in demand. They have other opportunities and ways in which they can deploy themselves, if you will. And so we've sometimes seen sensitivity on the part of the executives, which is they'll say, well, wait a minute, this business, and there are 1,000 people there, and it's going to matter to everyone there and in meetings exactly what is the title of this person. So it's not something to be taken lightly. What I would say is it's absolutely deserving of a lot of attention as an engagement is launching, exactly what is intended and how it should occur. And Olivia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's different ways that you can engage an executive too. So on one hand, you could say, I need someone who is 100% dedicated to this. They're not taking on outside clients, all hands on deck. That's one route. This other route of fractional, while I think the wiring of these executives are the same, they're wired for change. They can go in and help through these big challenges and transitions. A fractional executive is a lot more accessible to a company that may not be of the size where they need or can afford the full-on leader. They can kind of rent out a portion of that executive's time for whatever that project or need is. So that is one, I guess, small difference that's a little bit more, from a logistics side, but at its core, the wiring is the same.
As you're saying this, reminding me of, there's an engagement we're working on right now in the entertainment industry, and young upstarts doing a great job. Revenue has not yet hit 5 million. So it's not a big business, but it's meaningful, and they're growing, and they're doing great. We introduced them, to a number of executives. They need stronger operational talent. At the same point, they want heavy hitters, and we introduced them to someone. I won't say which channel it is, but certain channel that launched, and they had a $12 million investment. And ultimately, when it sold for $500 million. So you look at that executive and it's like, oh my God, this is a rock star. Well, there can be too much firepower for the size at which, these young Turks are at, with their $5 million business. And so in that case, labeling as, fractional CEO or COO is fine. It's just the understanding is it's project-based. And it is part-time, and it needs to be that way because you can't overload the organization. The parallel would be there are some companies where growing too fast is the kiss of death. And so everybody has to be very sensitive here to how you're matching, because in a lot of cases, the leadership is incredibly high firepower. As you know, Olivia, because you led them, we've surveyed thousands of executives over the past 15 years. We have an exact answer. It's 8.5 months. That is an answer from a lot of executives. But the variation there is, it could be the right amount of time for what the organization needs is 3 months, and it could be that it's 3 years. And what is expected here, part of our definition of what is it to have integrity operating as an interim fractional project executive is you do exactly what that organization needs of you. And if it needs 3 months, it better not go 3 months in a day. If you've agreed to remain on post for 2 years, you better not walk off at a year because you gave your word. And by the way, those longer stints, when it gets to 2 years, 3 years, that tends to be matching like a private equity hold period that, when a fund shows up and says, well, we've been in there a couple of years, would love to have this person there for the duration to the point of where we exit, we sell. And most of the execs we work with, that's exactly what they're looking for. And they would sign up for that, right?
Yeah. That's a great use case. And then you look on the flip side where a full-time search is taking place. That could take 4-6 months. And in some cases, the interim's coming in, helping stabilize things, helping put the structure in place, and then identifying their permanent replacement and working to onboard them to come into a much more stable environment than what originally was at play.
Let's put it this way for starters. If you can't do that quickly, you're in the wrong line of business and you're not going to last long with us. And I don't think you're going to last long in the marketplace. It is a primary driver for many executives who do this work that they are seeking great challenge. It tends to be outside of the first industry or industries that they've been in. It is this desire to be of use, to be of service, to have an ability to impact fast. This is the reason, by the way, at least in our experience, most use for interims and fractional executives is in the middle market on down. It's the middle market, the lower middle market. It's not among the Fortune 100, certainly. And the reason is inside vast organizations, there's lots of compartmentalization. A lot of these execs had success because they rose through that compartmentalization into serious leadership. And now they want bigger impact faster. So that kind of gets at the common denominator here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you said it right. If you're not getting up to speed and making impact fast, you're not going to make it. This is totally different.
By the way, getting up to speed does not mean, sorry for interrupting you, it doesn't mean that on day one you're ordering people around. That's a model that went out years ago. The number one thing we hear from executives, especially who are expert in crisis and turnaround, the number one thing happens on day one is listening. And it's a specific thing because it's usually not listening to the board, especially the board, the management team. That's how you got into the trouble in the first place, because it was kind of an echo chamber of listening to yourselves. What we tend to hear success among these execs in very high pressure situations is get onto the shop floor. Go talk to the guys, the men and women who are running all of the equipment. Talk to the administrative assistants who've been there longest. They have all this institutional memory and they've been discounted, right? So it is very heavy on having your antenna up and figuring things out to eventually to get at the point where you are making decisions and figuring out like a go forward team if there's a crisis.
Yeah, I think you hear executives say the answers are within the organization, and to give the team a voice when maybe they previously didn't have that is huge. So, and when you look at how an executive is engaged, this is not the same thing as bringing on a permanent hire. There's no severance, there's no benefits. These are not long-term contracts. So if it's not working, very easy to get out. Also easy to scale up, scale back based on what you need.
It is. So in our world, there are no off-the-shelf rates. We don't have any minimums. We got no dog in the hunt, which says we got to make X dollars per engagement executive company. That has nothing to do with our wiring. Our mission is be the best matchmaker on the planet, period. And if it means, that we don't think we have the right solution, we're not going to do it. So it's a secondary thing. I know it's important, of course, for everybody everybody, for executives, in terms of how much they're making for a company, how much they're spending. Our process is if we're going to recommend an executive, and if the organization says, yeah, they could be the right person for us, we're always saying, let's just get on a call together, or let's get in the room together and talk. And after those kinds of meetings, we debrief. We always debrief each side, the executives, the company. And with the executive, we're always asking the same questions. Is this right for you? Are you the best person in the world for this? What does it look like? What does day 1 look like when you're there? Day 30, what are you going to do? I mean, they got to prove themselves to us first. And we ask scope of work. Is it 6 months, 9 months, half your time, all your time? Final question is always, what do you want? What's the numbers look like? And we can hear lots of different things, even from executives who we routinely work with. We can hear if it's fractional, a certain amount of money, X dollars per hour. Usually most gigs bill out in an amount per month. The way we earn our keep is there's a markup on it. It could be the executive gets creative, especially in crisis situations. They might say, well, they can't afford what I normally charge. I'd be open to a bonus structure. I'd be open to performance payments. In certain situations, it could be equity component. It could be we're suggesting a complete recapitalization or spin-off of the business, in which case we may be bringing fresh money to the table. So we don't have an easy answer on the money. I will tell you, we have a very easy answer on our contract. Our contract structure is something which is set and it's foundational for us. But on the money, we're just trying to figure out what works for everybody.
We've been in this space for a long time, and we are selective about what we take on, and we ask executives to be selective about what they take on. If you're not, you just say I can do anything under the sun. Usually that's a flag, not a good fit to work with us. So we've developed a very stringent process in terms of how we're screening executives and making those matches. We have a specific methodology we've developed called FABS leadership, looking at different leadership styles and how they match up with where an organization's at and the type of leader they need right now. That's our shameless plug. But if you find that you are in need of an interim fractional CEO or other C-suite executive, we have spent a lot of years creating a go-to team we call our Red Team. We're happy to brainstorm what are the challenges that you're facing and how would we be of service in terms of connecting you with the right leadership. Appreciate you all joining today. If you'd like to get in contact, you can email us at redteam@interimexecs.com or visit the website interimexecs.com, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, Olivia.